but boy, it sucks to be in the middle of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's you can do it, but it's a lot of work. It's a process.
It's different, right? They just don't. It's hard to.
It's never done.
It's never done, right? You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Aline, the co-author of the books Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors and The Best Known Roofer. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the leading digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. I like to ask this, if you see those buttons in front of you, look at your phone, look at your computer, wherever you're listening or watching. If there's something that says subscribe, comment, follow, leave a review, do that for us, right? Just do that for us. It helps us, helps the algorithms. We got a hometown boy here. If you don't know, I live in the Minneapolis area, and we don't have a lot of Minneapolis contractors on. We've had a few, but we don't have a lot on. But Minneapolis is one of those. It's one of those amazing markets that I think people hide from. Right? There was an interview on of Prince, right, the iconic local Minneapolis musician, on Oprah one time, and he said, "Well, why don't you?" You have all this money. Why didn't you move to LA or Hollywood, or why didn't you do that? And he said, because the cold keeps the bad people away, right? And I think that that's one of the things about Minnesota is the cold keeps the bad people away. And we have such amazing people here. One of them who is Tony Flattum from Build Strong, now Build Strong, right? You have a long history in the roofing industry, but now the new brand that you're with is Build Strong. How's it going today, man?
Going awesome, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Do you think the cold keeps the bad people away, like Prince said?
No, I've never heard that, but yeah, I mean, that might be a case. That might work.
that might be the case, right? He was there was a prolific musician there. So Tony, I know, we talked and you were like, man, yeah, I haven't really. You just started kind of, putting yourself out there publicly, but my goodness, you have a history in this industry, right? And so it's going to be great for people to hear your story. Let's go back to the beginning. You've been in this industry for just over 20 years now. How'd you get into roofing?
Yeah, pretty much. I was flying around, traveling, doing some Best Buy work, building Best Buys throughout the country for 3 years out of high school. And just got really burnt out of traveling around for 3 years, living out of a suitcase. So I was like, what's next? What am I going to do? And my brother his friends opened a company in Stillwater and doing the roofing business. They were working back in 98 up until 01. They opened their own company in 01. And then they were reaching out to him saying, come on board and come over here and work in this roofing business. You're making good money and it's a great industry to be in. And he really didn't know much about it. So he's like, man, I'm already kind of settled in, been working, running some stuff for 10 years where he was at. And he just didn't want to make the jump and take the risk, to really do it. He didn't really know much about it. But he's like, I was looking. So I'm like, man, I want to do something different. He's like, you should go talk to these guys. They're good buddies of mine. They're doing construction. A little bit about construction and whatnot. You can go over there and help them out. So that's when I went over and sat down and did an interview. And it was actually more on the production side when I first started in 2002. And because they were like, well, we got sales, we got production. I'm like, well, I don't see myself being a sales guy. I just never really was a sales guy. So I was like, no, I'm going to skip that. Took the production side, went over there and got started and worked there for that whole season, running around, mainly just doing like repairs, quality control, watching job soup, and just making sure that the crews, if they need a material or fix some siding, fix some roof, install a window here and there. So it was just kind of all hands on deck doing that, 6 days a week and working my butt off. And then we got to the winter months to where we were slower and we're all sitting in the office kind of just doing our thing and seeing the guys coming in, making good money, talking about, the year they had. And I'm like, man, what are these guys doing? And Then they're like, well, they knock on doors, they sell roofs and sell siding. And I'm like, oh, geez, man, I don't know if I can knock on doors and do any of that. But that whole winter, I was kind of sitting around just really jonesing, thinking like, well, man, I mean, I want to live a better life. Like, I want to make some more money. I want to be able to do something great. And so I started thinking about it more and more. And then that spring came, and I was just kind of watching the top guys that sold the most jobs that year. And whenever I was out fixing some of their jobs, I would kind of look for them. And one day, one of the guys showed up, and I'm like, hey, man, how you doing? I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit on the sales side. And he's like, yeah, what do you want to know? I'm like, well, what's the whole deal? Like, how does this work?
Yeah.
Like, you guys knock on doors and you got this job, this nice big roof we're doing today, and knocking on doors. He's like, yeah, hop in the truck. Let's go for a drive. So I'm like, oh, okay. So we hopped in the truck, knocked on 10 doors just down the street when the job was going on. And the 10th one, we hop off on the roof, we get a yes, and he's up there running around, filling the contract out, and we get back down, he goes to the door, does his pitch, and he's going through this stuff and sitting down, and we get back in the truck. He signed the guy up. We got back in the truck, and I'm like, what's up, man? That's it? He's like, yeah, we just, $1,000, man, $1,000. And I'm like, $1,000? He's like, well, obviously it has to get approved. It has to go through the whole process of the insurance company. And so he kind of explained that to me, but he's like, look around this neighborhood. Every one of these houses is $1,000 bill, $500 to $1,000. And I'm like, dang, man, I'm not even making that much for a whole week working 60 hours, working salary for this company. I want to get on the sales side. I can sell one a week, And so then I made the jump over to 2003 into the sales for that company and made a move over. And I came out of the gate, just did really well, and sold a lot of jobs. And from there, it was just a couple of years in a row of selling, and then eventually got it off on my own in 2006.
Yeah. What do you think those early, where do you think the early success in sales came from?
I think it was mostly just the drive, man. I mean, it was just me wanting to make more money. And, I never really had a whole lot of money growing up. I mean, kind of lived check to check, and I always wanted more, but just didn't know how to get to that part and what I needed to do. But I knew that I always worked hard, and you show me something, I would go out there and just work and keep it simple and follow process. And so when they showed me the door knock approach to the closing and keeping it simple, I was like, man, I can do this. And I'm just going to repeat it over and over again, and then just outwork everybody around me. I mean, start earlier, work later, work Saturdays, every Saturday, and just get out there and get after it. So I did. I mean, I was just putting in the time, because there's a lot of guys that were there that were way smarter than me, that were way smoother than me, and they're more sales guys. And I'm like, man, I'm just going to go to work and just do my thing and work. And I'm looking back and I'm going, geez, I'm signing more deals than these guys. I'm up there towards the top, and we're fighting towards the top. And I'm just, had a really good year that year. And so everyone's like, man, you crushed it. And so then I just started training more guys and doing that. But then eventually I just went off and did my own thing in 2006 and kind of got that going and started growing over the years.
What is it? There's a saying about that, like work beats talent or something when talent's lazy or something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
So as a sales rep and then moving into your own company in 2006, that drive is what I see in contractors that find success. They put it on their backs to make it happen, right? Like there's as a sales rep, in anything, in all businesses too, right? Like if you put it on your own back and you're like, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to do it as a rep or as an owner, you have to take that responsibility. And I think that a lot of times people are looking for someone else to bring it to them, right? Like like you said, you just work these extra days, these extra hours, you put in the extra time and outperformed people who you felt were better at the actual job, right? Like it's a crazy thing. So now moving into 2006, you guys opened Stormguard Roofing, right? And so what was that transition like for you? Successful sales rep, making good money, boy, I can't do this anymore. I want my own company. I want my own opportunity. What were those times like for you?
Yeah, I was just because when I was working, we chased a storm down to Chicago, so we were down there working some storms from 2003, '04. Then went to Denver for a year in 2005 and did that. So I was traveling again, back working and doing this and chasing storms and really doing well on the sales side. But then I was like, man, I want to just get back to Minnesota. I want to do my own thing, build something up. And actually, I had some buddies that had storm guard restoration down in Florida. They were down there working the hurricanes. So then they said, hey, they were trying to recruit me to come over and work the hurricanes. And I'm like, well, I want to go back to Minnesota. I've been traveling for a couple of years, want to get back to Minnesota. So then I opened up storm guard restoration in Minnesota in 2006 for those guys. And then that was my own location. I was just paying a qualifying fee to them. And then originally, after like the first couple of years, we merged and partnered together and started building storm guard restoration out. And I have my own Minnesota location, and they were down in Florida. And then after that, we partnered up and just started, opening more locations throughout the country, working one storm to the next. And then we started franchising the business, started getting everything going and getting the locations for who was down there locally working. We would have them take over and have them pay a royalty to us for their franchise, working with brokers, and started really going through the process of the FDD to really building out the model to start franchising. And we did that for, I want to say it was 2010 until 2014 or so. We were doing a lot of the franchising plus our own locations as well, working in different markets and storms. But I just kind of got, burnt out running around doing the franchising side of things. So we just kind of got to a point where I'm like, man, I want to just pull back and be in Minnesota. So we worked out a deal where I got bought out of the company, got to rebrand, and then they sold it off to a franchising company and then rebranded.
Yeah. So in that time, though, there's a lot to unpack there. Like, you still, like, the reason that you wanted to, kind of start your own thing was to come back home, right? Like, just not be on the road for years. And, when you're storm chasing it, then that's grueling. Like, that is a grueling life. And it's tough on, I don't know what your family situation was, but it's tough on the family. It's tough on, like, man, it's a grueling grind. So now you get back, you're in Minnesota. This is one of the things that I think is super interesting about what you guys did. Were you guys, I mean, you had to have been one of the first franchises in roofing, right?
Yeah, I think there was one other one that was kind of going the same time as us, but we were kind of, starting, and it was just the two of us kind of getting going. Because even when we were getting rolling through all these brokers, I mean, they never really heard of the roofing industry franchising and doing that stuff. But we were following certain models on what they were doing for all the other franchises and going to all these broker meetings. And I mean, it was really new back then.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's pretty cool to kind of see now, because now the brand is still out there running around, and I still talk to the owner sometimes, and hasn't been in like the last year or so, but we would keep in touch and pick each other's brains a little bit, and they're still growing, which is kind of cool to see the national brand still out there.
It is. And to build a national brand, I heard you used the model of storm chasing, and let me you tell me if I'm correct or not. From what I heard from you used the model that you kind of grew up in sales on, right? Go work the storm, right? And then go work the next storm, and then go work the next storm. But instead of leaving that area, you set up shop and created a local entity, a local company in that area as you went along. Is that how it went?
Absolutely, because we want to be able to go to these markets and then provide for our sales guys to go out there and make money and work these areas. But we want to make sure we were taking care of the customer and not going in and leaving and bailing on them. So we wanted to make sure we had a warranty for them to always be taken care of if they had an issue with their roof. So we're like, well, man, how can we do this? I mean, let's go down here. We're going to work and build it, and we're going to hire people locally to come in and help us work and get the job done. And then at that point, we're like, well, hey, our best person that's local that really kind of stepped up, we would kind of give them the point lead and have them take over on the location and kind of run it. And then we would, go back home or work different markets and then kind of check back in with them and hold them accountable to kind of work with them to get them to hit their certain numbers. And then along the line, we just like, well, let's look into the franchising game altogether and just start selling franchises to brokers and go in and train them And so we started doing that for a while too. We would fly down and get them set up. They would pay for a whole package deal. We would show up and get their office set and get out there and get them rolling, knock on doors and get them off the ground.
Yeah. That's so I got a couple of things there. Like, first of all, it's, man, you're going into a market cold, and not that you were cold completely. You've done this before. You've been in the business. You saw how it was done. But when you go and enter a new market, I mean, the first thing is people, right? You got to find some good people to work with you. How did you do that over and over again?
Yeah, well, a lot of them that were buying new franchises, they were investing their own money into this model. So I mean, they were coming in, and then they would bring 3 or 4 or 5 of their buddies right out of the gate to come into the deal, because we're like, oh, hey, anyone that you want to recruit into the business, get them to come in. Let's fill some roles, and then I can fly in and teach you guys on the ground on like what to do and where to go and find neighborhoods and find out where there's actually damage in your neighborhood, to where we can go and offer free property inspections of the homeowners and pre-qualify them with their insurance company and walk them through the process.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it jump started. And then we would just put in ads, hire, and just keep building it from there.
Yeah. So it was like that buy-in that probably helped a lot, right? Like, was that buy-in that they were gonna, hey, we're putting some money into, we're putting some skin in the game also. If that's super interesting. So, and then the challenges, I've talked to a couple people on the podcast about that have multiple locations, and like, I would think that maybe it's, now saying things out loud, it's probably similar because they had buy-in. Maybe they were a little bit, more responsible for those locations. But how do you keep your brand, kind of intact, because you want to make sure that they're not screwing anything up. You want to make sure that they're doing a good job taking care of the customers. What were you doing from a brand, from a corporate perspective to, you had said you're fine, you're watching what they're doing a little bit, KPIs and things like that. What were some of how would if someone's going to expand national, to multiple locations, what are some tips and tricks or things to watch on an ongoing basis on those individual locations to make sure they're doing the right things?
Yeah, combing through their orders, making sure that everything that they're ordering and the process going in, making sure you're having the crews that you can vet and make sure that you watch and you've seen their jobs, that where they're building quality jobs. But then also hiring people that are experienced that can go out and watch the jobs and quality control. We had 2 people back then when we were doing this that would literally fly down like once a month and just kind of check on these franchises, go out in the field, making sure that everyone was, doing the job to our standard. And obviously there's things that always get missed here and there when you're not there that much. But I mean, when they're going down and going through and showing them, having weekly calls on what we're looking for and what we expect, I mean, for the most part, they're following our whole process of our FDD that we laid out. I mean, that thing was like this thick. I mean, it was a huge manual, and it took us a long time to go through and have those guys write it for us. But we would just talk through every little situation, and they would draft it out and put pictures in there and examples. And so they had a pretty good roadmap that we had to put together for them. But then just being on weekly calls, going down there, I mean, we were working with the whole agency that would help us out on just holding them accountable for the KPIs as well. As we were kind of working on the business and kind of developing and training, they were like holding everyone accountable for what we were looking for.
That's one of the big things that I think of in a franchise situation. If you're going to go into a franchise situation, boy, you got to have your procedures dialed in, right? So that's what you're talking about, that roadmap, that thick bundle, that like a process and a procedure for everything, right? That takes a lot of work. It's a lot of intention, just to build it out for for a local startup trying to do, 5 million. Boy, that's a lot of documentation. Where does someone start with that?
Well, it's hiring somebody that does that for a living. I mean, I was never a process guy myself.
So I was like franchise. You guys hired people that did franchise work. So that's where
We hired the brokers that all they do is set up franchises, and they do the manual, they do the FDD. All they do is sit down with us day after day and
Got
just
it.
kind of go through everything as they record us. They wrote it, they put it together. They would call back, we would read it and go through it together and say, nope, this isn't right. We got to change this. And so that was a long process.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like it was overnight. I mean, it was like a year of going through and just really dialing that thing in as we were working and doing our own locations and selling franchises locally, like within our own corporate location. And then once that was done, then we started selling franchises through the brokers.
Got it. So what did you learn during that process that you've carried on post Storm Guard?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much just knowing that you got to know what, everything's got to be laid out,
Yeah.
have good processes in place, and then having a standard. I mean, we still try to like hold that line and keep things in line to where you can hold that standard, because people are always going to try to dip their toe over a little bit, and you want to be lenient and friendly and nice about it, but in the same time, it's like, hey, we have something to protect here. We're going certain directions, and we have to do this few steps to get where we're going to go. And it's tough holding that line.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely difficult.
So now as you establish standards in the new company or whatever it is, or for someone in their company, it's a big thing. I mentioned this. This is going to be the second time on the podcast that I mentioned this, but I've been watching the University of Colorado with Dion, right? Like, and he came in and he said, hey, look, if you guys aren't willing to put in the work, leave now, right? We fired all the coaching staff. So what he did is he reset the standards, right? And that, having those standards, boy, and not letting people get outside of that, right? That's a challenging thing. Like you said, people are always going to try and stick it's always up to the line, right? So what are the standards that you need to have in your roofing company that any day, anytime, like, this is it. If you cross this line, boy, we have a big problem.
Yeah, well, for one, it's the bad culture. I mean, negativity. I mean, if you're tearing down, I mean, you can look at it, you're coming into the business to build it up or coming into business to tear it down. And if you're always pushing and fighting on everything that we're trying to put in place and not being open-minded and wanting to work with us to realize that we're doing what's best for the company, not just best what's for each person individually. Because if we do what's for each person and we have 16 different ways or 100 different ways of doing things, the company's going to be so unorganized and starting to bog down and cause problems, to where we made a big shift years ago to where we had to look at more of the company and say, hey, we're not just doing this to like push against you guys. We're putting these things in place to make sure that this company's around for as long as we can, to where you are taken care of. So for us, protecting the brand and protecting the company, we're protecting you. So once you can get that big shift in place to where you're like, hey, I mean, we need you guys to pour into the brand. This is our, it's like our flag. We look out for the company, watch the culture. People are coming in, lift them up, hold a standard, making sure that they're hitting certain numbers. Like for our sales side, we lay out for our sales team on how many contracts they should be hitting per week to keep them on track for what their goals are and then what our goals are, so we can make sure that they're making money and we're making money.
Yeah.
Because if they're in there just feeling like they're just working and putting the time in and they don't want to be there, well, we don't want them there. And we say it all the time in our meetings. Like, if you don't want to be here, you're not happy, and you're just showing up just to be here, let us help you go on somewhere else, because we don't want you here. We're holding you back. And we want you here because you want to be here. And we pour into our people, and a lot of them are all on board and they want to stay with us, and some are on board for a while and then they get to a different spot where they want to move on somewhere else. And we open the door and say, hey, we wish you the best.
That's right.
Just leave the right way. Leave the right way. We want you guys to be here because you want to be here. And that's kind of the biggest point that we always make, is like, we have good people that want to be here and they want to go to battle for us because of how we lay it out. We don't try to trap them, hold them, and make them come to work when they don't want to, because it's not easy going knocking on doors and being out in the field all day long. I mean, you got to find a certain person that wants to come in, get after it, and do their job and love it.
So it's not, just to expand on it, it's not just standards in like you're not just setting standards in the quality of work. There are cultural standards. One thing that I heard is one of your standards is we always want to be changing maybe for the better, if I'm paraphrasing, right? We're always trying to improve. That's culture, that building that into the culture. And then the other thing I heard was that, man, the people that aren't 100% committed, help them find a better path, right? And if it's not with you, it is with you're still helping them find a better path, right? And that's big. So I mean, so now you went through, it was StormGuard, and then moving out of StormGuard onto further companies, and now with BuildStrong, your people have followed you, right? Like people have followed you along the way. So that culture that you've built along the way, you've done a good job, right? When people will follow you as a leader, right? Like, what are some things that you look at in terms of building culture? What are some things that you're like, if you're starting from scratch, what are those things that matter the most when you're building that company culture?
Yeah, pretty much hanging with your people, getting to know them. I mean, not just only working in the company and showing up and saying, hey, go do this, go do that. I mean, we go out and do a ton of activities together. A lot of us will go out west and go snowmobiling. We'll go golfing. We'll do all these different things. We even pulled together company get-togethers with their spouses. So when we're getting together with everybody, they're coming and seeing like who this person's talking about, or, oh, hey, my husband's talking about this person he's working with. And you take that home every single day, and the people just don't ever know who they are. Like even when I was out running around working in the company, I'd come back and I'd be like, oh, hey, I'm out with so-and-so today. I'm out with so-and-so. They're like, well, who is that? Like, they have no idea. So that's why we put in place to where we just try to get together a couple of times a year on a big function of everyone getting together. Then obviously our Christmas parties, we get everyone together, the spouses, but it's really just getting to know them on a personal level. And then really for me is out there working with them as well. I mean, instead of me just sitting behind a desk pointing fingers and saying, get out there. I mean, up until just this year, for 21 years of my business, I've always been in the business, running around, helping them, being out in the field, being out in the trenches, knocking doors, getting on roofs with them. And they just, I think, earned a lot of respect, because they're like, hey, this guy could not be probably out here doing this, but he's out here doing it because he wants to see us succeed. And they just go to battle a lot more for you. And I had like 8 or 9 guys that went from StormGuard over to the different company, and then from that company to this company. So there's been a few different, little changes over the years, and some bumps and speed bumps and whatnot. But all those things happen for a reason. And
That's right.
It's just good to look back and having a lot of those guys still with me and hanging on and doing a great job and loving what they're doing.
Yeah, what you said there is I've actually I was thinking about this a lot lately. I got to contribute to a book around company culture, and the first thing that came to my mind when I started really sitting down and thinking about it is that culture is earned, right? Like you got to earn it, and what you had said there, you're out there, right? You're willing to. What did they like? I've heard it many times over the, if the CEO is willing to sweep the floor, right, or clean, like those types of actions. There's nothing that there's. It's crazy what that does, right? It's crazy. People see that, they feel it. They feel that you're willing to go out with them, not that you're not that you're sitting back, just. Sitting back collecting checks, and they're doing all the hard work, right? And getting to know people is an important thing for sure. Investing in your company of culture and company events, and getting everyone together, all of those are super important. As you are building along, we talked about last time we talked, it was building a team with good people. When you're starting out, you gotta start to fill the roles that you're not good at. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's you have to, I mean, you know where your strengths are, and everyone, like I always say in some of our meetings too, it's kind of funny because we always say, you got to suck at something.
Yeah.
And on the things that you do suck at, and for me, like it was drawing the processes or, creating the SOPs and doing that. Like, I'm just not a guy that likes to sit behind a desk and sit there and just type and do all that. I want to be out in the field. I want to be moving around. I love being outside and making things happen. So for me, I just got really good at knowing what I suck at and hire for those areas and have somebody come in and just have them take over on certain things and then bring it back to me and show me. And then I can be like, okay, yep, I like this. I like that. I don't like this. So at least they start knowing what I'm about and where I'm at. And then I let them take and run with it, and if you hang on to too much and you control everything, you can't grow. So you have to let some things go to grow. And that's been a big piece for me in the last probably 4 to 5 years, is just letting my leadership team kind of step up and give them more role and more trust, just to make their own call. Even if they fail forward. But it's just picking the right people, or even going after certain people and saying, hey, who do I know in the industry that's a consultant, or who is doing this part that I can have them come in and do the areas that I'm not very good at. It's better to pay that person to do that part so you can go out and do what you're good at, and then you can just multiply that much faster instead of trying to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Because for my first handful of years, it was me wearing all the hats, running around, doing production in the morning and going out and selling in the afternoon, and then coming back and doing, more paperwork for production for the next day to get it set up. And you get burnt out doing that.
Yeah.
So the faster you can get to that point to where you just start hiring somebody, bite the bullet a little bit, pay a little bit to get them out there doing that, so you can go and focus over here, you'll grow a lot faster.
Yeah. Get out of your own way, right? Get out of your own way. And then next is, you talked about, it's building that leadership team. I heard you say it there too. It's letting your leaders. So the first question I have for you around your leadership team is, how do you choose who becomes part of the leadership team?
Yeah, most of my people have been with me for a lot of years. So it's having them develop and keep stepping up, moving up and taking on more and more, to where eventually I'm like, okay, I need somebody to take over and run production. And this is my best person that's doing this, that cares the most, that I can trust the most. You have to trust them.
Yeah.
So they come in and you develop them and get them going, and then they take off and get that area taken care of. And then a sales manager, you start working with them, get them up to a certain point, managing a small team to where they can handle 5 people, 6 people. And then eventually you get them to take over and oversee the top tier of people. And then they can have their guys underneath them, training their team underneath them. So it's like more of a tier structure, to where we've learned back in the day, it was like one guy managing 20, 30 guys. And it's like, by the time you're taking care of 10 over here, the 10 over here are kind of failing and getting left alone. You go over there to take care of them, and then the other ones over here start falling down a little bit. So we've kind of narrowed it down to where we have like all of our managers only overseeing like 8 or 10 people at a time, so they can get the attention and make sure that they're getting the support to do their job right.
Yeah, that's impactful, right? Like if someone doesn't have the capacity, they're, to do their job well. So a sales manager that has too many reps that they're dealing with, boy, you gotta manage that capacity, right? A production manager has a capacity to how many jobs they can, there's understanding that capacity is going to be really impactful. And then once you have the leadership in place, you'd said the next thing, the next step in the process is refining processes over time. And we kind of talked about that a little bit up front. That's not been your forte, right? Like that's not that other people are better, but you've been through it. Yeah. And how do you guys look at it? Like, I think of it that like SOPs are living documents, right? Like it's just, hey, we do this. You have to run through them, and then you get to change things as things change, as new problems arise. How do you guys go about fixing and filling the gaps along the way?
Yeah, so it's ongoing all the time. When we're working and we're having our employees running around doing the day-to-day, we're always having them write down things that they see that might be a better way, or a different solution to the problem. And they're not always the solution that takes care of it. They bring it to us. We review it in leadership and say, hey, let's put this on the list. Let's start working on this stuff. And then when the things that we can address during the season, we do. The things that are more of a bigger moving part to where it's going to take some time to move some things around, we have the slower season, the winter months, to where we really dive in every single year and taking all those weeks of everyone else out there doing the day-to-day, putting their notes and their information down. We go and review that every single winter and then just put in things in place that we feel that are the best solution to the problem and keep tweaking it to make it better. And we're still, I mean, even 22 years in the business, we're still always adding things and making tweaks. It's never done.
It's never done, right? Like it never ends. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand about business ownership is that, boy, it's like, wow, you look back over the years and you're like, man, I had 3 people in my company and now I have 20 and I'm more busy than I was when back then. You're just working on different things and different high level things. It's crazy how that works out. Now you've made some changes. You're a true storm chaser, right? Like through and through, you've been a storm chaser for 20 years, right? Like, and so how has the business changed? How have the comp structures changed? How has the business evolved, over the years, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, so we traveled quite a bit doing, from storm to storm back in the day, but then really from 2014 when that whole thing, my partnership, we parted ways and sold off the franchise. I've been pretty much back in Minnesota, building here, working here year round, and getting the company off the ground and getting it growing. But our plan is to get more locations now as we grow. And so our people that are moving up want to take on a location. They're running teams. And so we're going to we opened up Rochester. We're going to open up maybe Madison or Iowa, like just different areas that are closer to us that we can manage and get to. I mean, we don't want to spread ourselves too thin, but we stormed for quite a while back in the day, but it hasn't been the last 10 almost of not storming.
I think that's, I've talked to a couple of, like there's two, do you think that you need to have one business model or the other, either you're chasing or we call it storm catching, right? When you're established in an area that has, consistent storm activity, you'll have some ups and downs through the years as the storm activity comes and goes, but you have your brand in the market. Are you looking at that I guess, have you started looking at that differently? Like about like more on, hey, let's establish a brand in this market versus, going chasing the storms. Was that a conscious change, or was it just like, hey, I like to be home now and we're going to build it here?
Well, that was back when I got married, I had my first child, and then I started having more kids. And so that was like all through 2007 to 2013. I got married in that time and had 3 kids in that time. So there was a lot of that, of pulling back and wanting to be more here and not have to travel as much. And even through those down years where there wasn't a storm, we would just get out there and just knock on as many doors as we can and just offer opportunities to our homeowners and see who qualified and who didn't qualify. And the ones that didn't, that had bad roofs, we would give them a retail bid and sell them a roof that way.
Yeah.
And so we did enough to keep busy. We didn't really have to storm anymore. But even with that, like you can either have both models and have one local model rolling and then have a small storm team that you could go and work and hit a market and work and work for that season and pull out of there. But we really like to try to go down if we're going to do it. Like that's why I always did the franchising part, because we would go down. We'd want to stay there. Yeah. We wouldn't want to just leave and go to the next storm, not have no one there taking care of that market. Yeah. So if we do have more locations, our plan is to take the brand, go down, take a team, set up, get it off the ground, hire locally, build it out locally, and then just have them being in our CRM. Now with Zoom meetings these days, you can be anywhere and run meetings and have them be in our corporate location up here, our main location, and have them jump on for all of our training. So as we expand and get back into more markets at some point, we can do it anywhere.
One of my I've had him on the podcast. He's a friend of mine, John Senek, John the Roof Pro. We were chatting at one of the conferences last year, and he was like, a company that is retail focused but knows how to do storm restoration. If you could do both, boy, that's a strong combination, right? If you can sell a roof retail, like kind of what you just said, if it doesn't get approved, we could sell you a roof retail. There's that combination. What do you think? Because I think that has, people look at that as two different business models. They don't combine them a lot, right?
Right. Because, the storm business, people are more fast paced. You're out there doing a quick inspection. You're getting back down. It's insurance paid. So you're picking out a color and moving it through a lot faster. Retail, you got to slow down a little bit. You got to get down there. You got to talk about the company story. You got to talk about you and who you are and what you're going to take care of and go over different products. And it's a lot more of a deep dive into the whole project.
Yeah.
So most of the guys that are on the storm side don't really want to do that and take a 2-hour demo, where the other guys that are doing retail don't want to go out there and just wing through it and sign a contract and go through the colors and say, hey, you have weathered wood up there now, or you have driftwood up there now. Let's just pick out what's close, and here's the color, and bam, move on to the next one. So it's a lot faster pace. But we even have guys in the storm business now that we go out and we knock and we do this, and then we have people come back in there and sit down with the homeowner, and we go over upgrades.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're approved for this, and you can also add this if you want to, or attic insulation or whatever else. And so you're upselling the job as well and getting pretty much more retail money on the job. But
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Because that's what I see too. It's a lot of times the reps are better in certain situations, right? Of course we have we do digital marketing for roofing companies, right? So guys that are used to the door-to-door storm chasing model, man, when they have to go and run that, Facebook ad lead or that Google ad lead or SEO lead, it's a different thing. And that's what you just, I love the way you put it you have to slow down on the retail model, and it's much different. How do you train your team to keep that balance, to have them be able to do both?
So we have the ones that are out knocking on the doors, are out there knocking on the doors and getting the initial inspection and doing that part and teeing it up. So the ones that are overly detailed, that are wanting to sit down and talk about the company story and go over the different options of like better underlayment and kick out flashings and go through the detail stuff, they're used to doing that part of it. The door knockers, they're not the ones that are sitting down and going through that with the homeowner. They're just up there getting the jobs, taking the pictures, pre-qualifying them, and letting them know what their chances are of being approved by the insurance company, and walking them through the process and getting them approved, and then teeing them off to the next person. So we've tried having the guys that are just out there burn and turn, knocking doors, to sit down and go through that. It's you can do it, but it's a lot of work. It's a process.
It's different, right? They just don't. It's hard to be it. And you could make it an easier comparison if someone that sells commercial versus residential, right? Like there's a different. Like it's a different personality. It's a different, it's so much different. But I think that a lot of owners they try to fit a square peg in a round hole. So it sounds like this is just me, thinking, it sounds like you just said, hey, these are your strengths, do this. But you fill the gap by having the people on the other side that have that skill set too. So you want to maybe a good way to put it is you want to have a team of salespeople that is diverse in their skill set.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You want to really have maybe even two different models. Within your division, you have the door knockers, the insurance restoration side to the retail side. And when a retail lead comes in, it goes to that division. And if it's a storm lead or for insurance or whatnot, you have it to this division. And commercial, HOA, have a different division for that. Yeah. Because if you try to have one person doing it all, they're just all over the board and they're just going to miss things, and it's just not going to be consistent. So you got to divide it out and have the best of the best, do those areas, and then keep moving forward.
Yeah. One thing that I mean, you guys, my goodness, like I think that, it's the not that you've lost it all. Like, I don't want to put that out there like you've lost it all, but there's that story of like that when they ask people who have been successful, if you started over, if you had to go to zero and you started over, you're like, oh yeah, I just go much faster. With Build Strong, you guys went from what, 8 reps to what do you guys have from a team perspective now in 2023?
Yeah, so pretty much when we started Built Strong in 2016, we had about 8 of us that came over and got this going. And then from there, I mean, we ramped up to where right now we're on about 102 employees.
So this is where I think my goodness, it scares a lot of contractors to hire, right? That's a lot of people really fast. How do you look at that? I mean, I would say that it's your past experience that allowed you to say, to have that visibility that, we could get there. And you're probably like, we're going to hire another 100 here in the next couple of years. I don't know, but like it's like it becomes easier after you've done it maybe. But for someone that doesn't have that that hasn't gotten there and they haven't, their mindset isn't there yet. What do you say to that person? How, I mean, I don't know if you want to share numbers or not about where you guys are at now, but I mean, you're a 1% contractor, right? Like you guys there's very few that get to the size that you guys are already at. That it's hard for people to even understand how that even happens, right? How do you go from those, 8 guys to 100 and something employee, really, hasn't been that long,
Right. And that's obviously, I mean, knowing and what I've been through and what I've seen and whatnot and starting over. So it's like, even when we kind of started from the 8 and moved over in 2016, we weren't really starting over. We were just starting with the experience and what not to do and what to do. But it truly comes down to just having that big mindset, big goals, and never just being comfortable. For me, like I am never comfortable. Like I want to keep going after it, keep growing. And everyone's like, well, why do you want to keep growing? Like when's enough's enough? I'm like, if you're having fun doing what you're doing and you can bring in more people and seeing their lives change and doing good for them, it's like, bring everybody in, and the more people you bring around you and you grow, they're going to just bring in more people and it's just going to start multiplying. So really we started bringing in good people. They started bringing in their friends. We brought in a recruiter that's hiring for us around the clock and just bringing in people. And our sales guys are always out networking and meeting people and friends. And so, we ramped up and we had these storms in the last couple of years and we needed more help. And they were posting on Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff. And when you're doing good things and they're doing good things, everyone wants like, hey, what are you guys doing over there? And they want to come and be part of it. And so, we've been not really limiting ourselves. We've been just opening the door, always recruiting, always bringing people in.
That I think that's definitely a mindset shift. And it maybe becomes a shift in your why, right? Like your why when you opened the StormGuard location, was to come home and be home, right? And, maybe might not have been, I don't know if it was at the time, but I'm sure you had financial goals. But, a lot of times in the beginning, it's financial goals is what I want to kind of how I want to frame this, is that a lot of times early on it's financial goals, but then you get to these financial goals and then it starts to become a lot of the contractors, it sounds like for you too, or successful business people that I talk to, it becomes how they can make other people successful. Is that your why now?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of my biggest passions when I can have our people coming in and friends of friends and they're telling their story instead of me always telling my story back in the day. Yeah. Now it's them telling their story on what they've done for their life and buying cabins or buying boats or buying, investments. I mean, people in our company are doing so many cool things. I mean, we have people that for their first time ever going on a plane and leaving the state or going, we went to Colombia last year for a company trip, and we had a couple of people that had never been on a plane in their whole entire life. And for their first time, they get to go to Colombia and make memories with all of us and hanging out, and then have them telling their story in the company meetings.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff is just over the top what drives me. And then also just giving back to charities. And we do a lot of different give backs and sponsoring schools and doing a lot of give backs. And my wife's big into like Coco's Heart Dog Rescue, which is right here near Stillwater. And we've been doing fostering for the last 4 years. So we sponsor their events and help out and rescue dogs. And you couldn't do that kind of stuff if you weren't in a position to do those kind of things. So it's just fun doing, in the beginning, like you said, it's always about the money in the beginning. Everyone wants to make some money.
Yeah.
Get out there and do that. But then you start making some money, you start doing good with it. There's nothing better than helping somebody that's truly in need of what they need help on, or changing their life, even if it's like a small little donation or a gift that can change their life. I mean, we do every single year too. We do in Thanksgiving, in November, we do, give back. We pick 6 families and go over there and give them full Thanksgiving dinners, and to see their smile on their faces and their kids and how happy they are. I mean, that stuff is priceless. I mean, you can't even put a dollar on that. Like you do that for a family and you see that and how thankful they are. And then also you take it to where you're helping somebody put a new roof on their house. Like we do give backs and do a roof on their house. And Susan G. Komen, every single year we donate so many, $50 per job built in the month of October. We donate that back. And last year was like over $20,000 in donation to that cause. And so you do those things, you pick certain months. We do the Toys for Tots for December. Now we kind of shifted over to where we go down to the hospital and give them to the kids, so we can actually see the toys getting to the kids instead of just going and throwing them in a pile and then they go out to kids, which is still a good cause. Yeah. But we want to try to really go out and like give the gifts to the, Gillette Hospital to the kids. And I have my employees go and do that. And all of us go over and help out and just to have them feel the energy of giving it to the kids and giving it to the workers there, and having them being like, oh my God, we're doing so good with this company and it makes me feel good. And they appreciate where they're working because we're doing good things, and they get to be involved in it. Not just us writing a check or dropping some toys off. Like we take new people every single year and go and do that and say, come help out this year. And they love it.
Yeah. And that's culture too, right? Because again, that the culture's earned, in my opinion, right? So you're earning that culture by doing things for the community, for people, for charities, and then bringing your team with you. Right? Man, it's big, right? It's big to them to see that. Oh, Tony's successful. He's got a nice boat on the river. He's cruising around. He's, but no. Tony also does all these other things too. Like it's not, so along the way, where did the financial goal versus the creating good goal change? Where did that change for you?
Yeah, I would say probably, really back in 2009, 2010, I had some really good years back in those years too, from either selling with the company to opening the own company and getting that going. I was in a pretty good place then because I started buying a lot of real estate then. I was pretty smart early on and started pouring all my money that I was making into real estate. Wasn't really running around buying too many crazy things. I would definitely go on nice trips and live and work hard and play hard in the winter months. Yeah. But for the most part, everything else, I would just invest in the real estate. So I set myself up early on to where that's why, I look at it now as my first 20 years was pretty much me just grinding, working in silence. I wasn't really putting myself out there on social media and telling my story and doing any of this stuff. And then I started getting around more coaches and mentors, and they're like, man, you gotta tell your story. Like you gotta start posting more and putting things out there, because what you're doing, people want to hear that stuff, and you're gonna help them. And even if it's one person here, one person there, like you could change somebody's life. And what's crazy is I've been doing that like the last year and a half, doing more posts and putting things out there, and I'm having people reach out to me and having great conversations and giving some good advice and just meeting up and having good conversations and walking them through certain things. And that's what it's all about is like, I mean, I did it for so long for everyone that's working with me and around me of giving back and doing those things and trying to change their life. Now that's kind of where I'm to a point where I want to just do it on a bigger level and help anybody and put out good positive energy and have good energy come back my way by just doing good things and helping out.
Yeah, it's a I don't know, I get the cycle of success maybe, like it just it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling when you get to a point where someone can take the lessons that you've learned along the way and make big changes in their life. You'd mentioned coaches. So did you seek out coaches early on, or was that something you did along the way? Speak about your journey with getting mentorship and coaching.
Yeah, so mostly it started when I started going to the events. I mean, like my first one that I really started going through was back in 2018. Like I was always just out there grinding, doing the same thing over and over again, repeating the process and just trying to grow and bring in more people to do that. And I would always follow and listen and whatnot. But I started going to like more events. And my first one was when I went to Tony Robbins' event. And that was actually one that was much needed because that was like 2 years after my whole partnership went down. And that second one was pretty difficult. I mean, I don't really talk about it too much, but the first one with StormGuard, we went through a partnership. We were going different directions, parted ways. We worked through that. It was a pretty smooth deal, but the brand we sold off, it was, gone and we had to rebrand. But then the next company, it was an employee of StormGuard. It was our sales manager. We moved over to open a new company. I'm not even going to say the company name. I don't want to give him any props. I don't even want to give his name out there. But it's like we rebranded and got a new company going from 2014 after getting rid of the StormGuard deal and moving on from that journey, and ran from 2014 to 2016. We built this company up, and he just came in and totally cutthroat and just took the money and just pulled a deal where we had to pretty much start over. And me and 8 guys were like kind of left there, didn't get paid, kind of just, got everything pulled underneath us. Yeah. And so we went over with my brother. My brother started the company in 2014. And I went over and said, hey, I want to open a branch and get rolling with you and start something, and start building it up. And we started in 2016, middle of the year, to start building that company up. But other than that, it was just like, trying to figure out what we're going to do and where we're going to go with it.
Yeah, so that's a good point, is that, we had talked about that and I didn't know how much you wanted to go into it or not, but there's ups and downs along the way, right? Like a lot of times people see the end goal or the end of things, right? But boy, there's always turbulence along the way. Tony Robbins was your first kind of going, when you went out into the, hey, let's go and do some personal development, maybe, where have you gone from there? What is, what did that experience teach you first? What did that Tony Robbins experience teach you first?
Well, that Tony Robbins event was the eye opener for me, because I was always trying to figure out, like, why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? And this partner kind of took this and was going different directions. He could have easily came to me and had a conversation. I'm more than reasonable. We could have easily dissolved the company or parted ways, friendly, and instead of doing it cutthroat. But he thought to do it his way and came in and kind of blindsided me. But when I went to that Tony Robbins event, that's when it kind of just majorly shift for my mindset to where, because he would give so many examples. It was like 4 days of like 10, 12-hour days. Like, I mean, if you ever gone to an event, it's amazing. Like you're immersed with this whole like 40 hours, 50 hours in like 4 days of just nonstop stories and examples and like how to like unleash the crap within you that you're holding on to. And so when I heard all these stories and going deep into things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And when I heard that, it was just like a huge off of my shoulders where I was just like, I needed to hear that, because I was wondering why it was happening to me. A good partner, trusted him, didn't even look over my shoulders, just went out and worked and did my thing. And then he goes and pulls this. And it's like, I didn't deserve that. My guys didn't deserve that. Like, where did that come from? But now I look at it as like looking back after all those years and even at being at the event, coming back, I'm like, man, that it happened for me.
It happened
And I
for
don't
you.
know what it is or where I'm going to go from here, but I just know that looking back now, like I'm glad that actually happened. And and I actually, if I saw him, I'd be like, hey man, you know what? It sucked that it happened, but I forgive you and I thank you because I'm in the best spot I've ever been in my whole entire life. And it's because of that pivot point and where I'm at now. We're not partners, we're not together, and I'm doing my journey, you're doing your journey, and now I look at everything differently to where everything happens for a reason,
It's
and they
crazy.
happen for you, not to you.
It's fun. It's fun to look back at and connect those dots. But boy, it sucks to be in the middle of it.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was a brutal, yeah, a
Yeah.
brutal 3-4 years after that whole thing happened of just like going through and dealing with it and trying to get paid and trying to get,
Yeah.
some kind of closure. And but it definitely made it a lot easier hitting that 2018. And then from there, I just got kind of addicted to like watching motivational
Yeah.
videos, to going to a bunch of conferences and being around the roofing conferences and going down to like big masterminds and being around people that just want to win. And when you're around that over and over again and you're hearing that just everyone wants to help each other, it just kind of remotivated me to kind of just get out there and keep going and not give up and know that everyone goes through some crap in their life and they deal with certain things. But if you can just keep moving forward and fail forward and don't ever look at it, if you quit, you're going to lose. If you keep working and going forward and you learn from it, you're never going to fail. And then now getting to a point where it's more about just helping people and helping the people that I'm working with, and also the customers we're helping, and then also giving back to communities. Like it's a win-win all around. I mean, from taking care of the people that you're around and your network to being around more people that can kind of pull you up and then turn around and pull them up. So it's not only like I'm up here, I'm in this certain spot of my life and I don't want no one else to get there. It's like I'm not even close to where I want to be yet. I have so many more goals way ahead of me that where it's like I want to just keep reaching up and growing and then reach back and pull everyone with me. So
Yeah. It's so much fun. One of the things that we did talk about that I want to touch on, before we wrap up here, is is a change in the industry that I've seen with a few different successful contractors, and that's going from 1099 to W-2, and that's something that you guys did, right? What
we did.
what was the thought process around that, and what have been, what was the cause of it, and what has been the effect of it?
Yeah, so it was one of those things where we were always 1099, and we would always find that we would work from March until November, and we would just grind away and then take off for the whole entire winter. And then in the spring, you're trying to get everyone back rallied together and say, hey, come back and start working. Let's get the season going. And it wasn't until May, June, they're finally getting rolling again. And it's like, man, it's good to have all this time off and work hard and play hard, but you can still work hard and take a week here and a week there, not taking the whole winter off. So we just wanted to be more of a year-round business. So in 2019, we made the switch. We were leaning towards on going W-2 so we can build like a year-round model and hire and get the health insurance and just be able to hire more people and recruit more people, saying, hey, we're not a seasonal business. Like we're a full-time company. You're going to come in. We're going to keep you on. We want to build good people and have them on long term, and build a business. And that's why we are starting to grow even more too, because now we're working all winter long. We're training. We're going through different processes. We're obviously still collecting final checks from insurance companies. But going from 1099 to W-2 was a huge game changer for us, only because we can pretty much keep them on board working year round and get some more consistency.
Yeah, the consistency was interesting when you told me about that. I was like, man, that's because that's what happens in the northern markets, right? It's people go away and come back, and you got to pull everyone back. And it seems like you guys have really been conscious and all in and also using that time wisely. What do how are you using that time to build up the team, to better the team? You had mentioned earlier that that's the time where you guys sit down and look at big projects. What are the things that you're doing there to level up for the next season?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we bring in people from our industry to come in, if it's like Velux or Owens Corning or any of those providers, to come in and talk about the products. We do training every week. So we have our company-wide meetings on Mondays. We have our, sales training, door knocking training on Thursdays. We have our leadership meetings on Fridays. And then we have the Tuesday and Wednesday, we just throw in other trainings and stuff for speakers that come in. And we're also just always still collecting files. I mean, the insurance, as you're turning in files all through November, December, and you can build as late as you can, there's always a delay on waiting for the insurance company to invoice them, to get those checks coming and to get that. So there's always work there to do. Plus, we always kind of keep them calling on their previous customers, following up, checking on their payments, and asking them, hey, what else can we help you with? I mean, anything else you're seeing, or can I come out and look in the attic for attic insulation? I mean, just getting business rolling, just keeping things kind of moving a little bit to where it's definitely a lot slower in the winter. I mean, we crank all summer, but in the winter, we just kind of keep that wheel turning to where we don't want it to stop. We want to keep it rolling.
Keep the activity going. That's an important part of it. Keep your reps. It sounds like keep your reps getting reps in, right? Like they're getting even if they're just calling to talk about, this or that, or they're, hey, can I come look at your installation? All of that stuff, they're still keeping it going. What do you think the greatest insight is that you could share with our audience that's helped you find success, that could help them find success in their roofing businesses?
Yeah, recruiting good people and just training good people. And it's like, if you got to get your people better or get better people. And if you can just really focus on bringing in more people that are like you, that you want to grow with and multiply, and then trusting them too. I mean, just giving them roles, have them develop and have them realize, like, hey, what would you do in this situation? I mean, okay, you brought me a problem. What's your solution to it? Not that I would be the solution that we're going to go with and fix, but I want to hear what you would have to say. And most of the times they have a really good answer, and they just develop to where if you can pull those people in and just have your people feel that they're actually doing something to grow the company. Because if it's always coming from a management, or you're always saying, hey, do this, you have to get buy-in from your whole team to have them put in their ideas. And like, we had our whole company go through our core values and put in what they would think, and have us all kind of vote as a company on our core values, and change that about 4 years ago and made it more of a company-wide, core value and a mission statement and stuff. So it wasn't just from me or from our leadership or anything. It was, you just get more buy-in. You get people that want to work with you and not for you, and just get out there and get after it.
Awesome, man. It's been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast.
If you would like to generate more revenue through your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com to get a copy of the book, The Best Known Roofer. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. Thanks for listening.